As you may have seen in our last video, I just bought $10,000 monitors for my studio, and I figured what better way to break them in / see if this investment was worth the money than by redoing one of my old mixes. So in this video today, I'm going to be looking at a song that I mixed on my Focals back in December, and we're going to be comparing that with the same exact song that I mixed on my ATCs this week. I've only been on the monitors for about a week and a half. I'm still kind of getting to know them, getting to know my room. I just hung up clouds above my listening position, but I figured what better way to kind of test out how different these monitors sound, how different the actual mix and production moves I'm going to make are, and to really see if these were worth the $10,000 investment. So let's go ahead and let's dive in and compare both of those mixes. But before we do, you're watching Make Pop Music. My name is Austin. We do videos every single Friday. So if you're into music production, songwriting, anything like that, make sure you subscribe. We have these come out every single week. And then other than that, if you want to support our channel, you can head over to our website, Make Pop Music. We have sample packs, preset packs, courses. We have a bunch of free content that you can download. So go check that out. There is a link for everything in the description. Let's dive in and let's compare these mixes. Okay, so here is the first mix down here. I did this on the Focals, it looks like on December 21st of 2023. So just over a month ago. Actually, yeah, a month and a day ago from when I'm filming this right now. Let's take a listen because at the time, this was kind of my first mix pass. I probably could have revised it more and done like car checks and headphone checks, but I knew that I was getting new monitors, so I didn't really stress it too much. Let's just see what this first mix sounds like and then talk about some of the issues that I'm having with it. All right, we'll just go from the verse and then into the chorus.
I have a tendency to pull on loose threads till they slowly unravel. And if I'm honest with myself, my anxiety will win every battle.
Okay, so there's the verse. Things that I noticed immediately when I came onto the ATCs was that the mid-range, I feel like, is pretty cluttered. Also, big shout out to Matt Huber, who is an incredible mix engineer. He's done Nightly, Valley, Joan, Boys Like Girls. He's really been helping me get used to these ATCs. He's been working on them for a while, and so I've just been bouncing stuff off of him, and he immediately recognized that the mid-range on this Focal mix was less than stellar. So we're going to be looking at the mid-range, especially in like the synths and guitars. To me, the vocals are thin and they're like really boomy on the low end, and they're kind of bright and sibilant on the top end, and they're kind of just undefined. And then the stereo image of this is just like a little bit stale and boring to me. So those are the main things that I want to focus on, especially in the verse. I kind of just want this to open up. And you might be listening and thinking, this mix sounds fine. You could probably release this. And to be honest, I probably could. I don't think it's awful. It's definitely not terrible, especially if I would have done a round or two of revisions. But it's things that immediately stick out once I move to the different monitors. Let's go ahead and let's hear the chorus real quick.
All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the water rising, please don't let me drown. I can't seem to catch my breath.
One thing that I'm also noticing is it could just be a mid-range thing, but the synths also feel kind of wet and kind of spacey. So all I'm really hearing is kick, snare, vocal, and then this kind of like ambient, washy, like 400 to 800 mid-range. And everything, again, feels pretty compact, and I kind of feel like things are stepping on each other. So let's go ahead and let's start showing you some of the things that I did in the new version of the mix. So one of the first things that I did was I wanted to get these drums knocking a little bit harder, and I thought that the best way to do that would be the kick. So this is essentially what the kick sounded like in the old version, minus some leveling stuff. Obviously, like levels changed once I got onto new monitors, but I'm going to show you some of the processing. So this is what the kick was in the last version. What I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to beef up the sub of the kick, and I kind of wanted to attenuate some of that like knocking 200 to 400, because to me, that hits a small speaker really hard. It hits a meter really hard, and it's not something that I really need in my sub. I have that 200 kind of being filled by vocals and synths and a snare drum. So I kind of wanted this kick to scoop out just a little bit more because I feel like it would open up my mix. So I added this little kind of pull tech from Waves, just boosting the low end at like 60, attenuating the like low mids a ton, and then just kind of boosting the top end. And with this one little plugin, it sounds like this. It almost adds like this weird compression. Like a Pultec does this weird thing where when you boost and attenuate, it'll start to kind of compress the sound. So it sounds like this kick has a bigger, kind of more consistent low end, and it sounds like the mids are much more controlled. And then I basically just went in and kind of sculpted out everything below 20, and then again, everything in between like 140 and 200 to 300. And this really opens up the kick for me. And then we just added knock to get some of our volume and clipping back. And here is the kick that I ended up with on the ATCs. Versus this. And as you can tell, we're already starting to figure out how to sculpt the mid-range of different elements. And that was one of the main things that when I did this big speaker upgrade, seeing the mid-range in a mix really come together is just like night and day, where every other speaker that I tested, whether it was the Barefoots, which I didn't like at all really, or even like Genelecs or Focals, which I also didn't really like, the mid-range wasn't nearly this definable. And so coming in and doing that simple little EQ move on that kick really made a huge difference to me. And then other than that, I just figured, okay, I can pan the hats a little bit more, create some more stereo separation. I can boost the snare and make it a little bit brighter. And then I took these little like garage perk loops and basically just spread them out with a Hassan imager. And now that's kind of opening up the middle of my stereo field, because I don't need those like clicky percussions and stuff like that to really sum down to mono. They're more just texture and ear candy. So I want those out of the way of my lead vocal and my lead kind of bass and elements. Other than that, I didn't make any changes to the effects or anything like that. I did make a couple small little tweaks to like the low end. One of the main things that I did was I swapped out the bass just for like a really general kind of sine wave sub bass with no stereo spread. And then I added this little black box right here just because I figured some saturation would be nice. Let me show you what it sounds like without it. It just adds a little bit of saturation, also adds a little bit of that kind of like natural compression that you get when you saturate something. And again, I'm kind of scooping out some of that 300 to 400. I don't need that in a sub bass. And then I'm just adding this wide layer on top, which did not exist in the original version. And that already makes a huge difference from basically what would have been before. Would have sounded a little bit something like this. Let me go back up to this kick. Would have sounded like this. So we're getting a tighter mid-range, we're getting a cooler stereo field. Those are the main things that I did to the kick and bass and drums in general. And then for the synths, it was really just kind of a leveling thing. I didn't add too many different like new EQs or inserts, because to be honest, they're all so EQ'd anyway. The only one that I think I did was I kind of tightened up this piano with this like 300 dip right here and just made it a little bit brighter. Really just helps it kind of come forward in the mix. Nothing super critical on that. But again, I'm just trying to clean up that mid-range for drums, bass, and vocals. And then other than that, this sparkle pad, I also cleaned up a lot. So here's what it sounded like in the Focal mix. Put some EQ on that because I don't need some of that mid-range. I want it to sparkle. And then I actually spread this out with the Haas from Kilohertz, and I'm taking out some of the center because I just want this sound on the sides. Then other than that, I just decided to pan these two ARPs. So I panned one left and one right. And that was really all I did to like the individual synth layers. I essentially, again, just wanted to kind of open up the stereo field. And then in terms of EQ, I really just did some mid-side kind of right here where I'm scooping out some 900 of the mids, and then I'm boosting a lot, honestly, on the sides. Just really opening up those synths so they can really shine in the mix. Mid-side EQ on synths is one of my favorite things ever. So here's what it sounded like before. Again, just really getting that to kind of open up. Other than that, this was probably the biggest change in terms of instrumental, was these guitars right here were so mid-heavy. Let me go back to the vocal mix so you can hear. Listen to how much mid-range is happening in this little guitar section.
Little minutes now, I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the water rising, please.
It's just everything stepping on itself. So one of the big things that I did, and this is where kind of Matt stepped in and he was like, hey, definitely control some of that mid-range on these guitars, was I added this SSL. And this is something I've been trying to do more in general, is basically just start using different EQs to give me different tones and textures. I didn't just want to go into Pro Q and scoop out 400 with like a pretty standard curve, because to me, that would have just been a little bit stale and generic. So I brought in this SSL, which I know is really good for controlling kind of mid-range and really getting something to bite. And what I did was I took out about 3 dB of like right around 400 hertz. And then I boosted 5 dB of almost 10K. So here's what these guitars sounded like without this. And that really opens up the mix a ton, especially if I go to this verse. It's a massive difference, like huge, huge, huge. Again, we're just carving and carving and carving. And one of the things that Matt was kind of telling me was, he was like, on the ATCs, you're going to realize that everything will have a specific place in your mix, and you can get pretty aggressive with EQ and figure out, okay, I don't need any of the 400 for this guitar because I have a sine wave pad up here that is going to kind of control that. So when I have this pad, there's no reason to have that 400 also in the guitar, because things are going to step on each other. So I think that this is even going to come down to when I'm producing on these new speakers, finding elements that can kind of fill up that range and kind of create that wall of sound without stepping on each other. And one of the things that these have kind of been highlighting is just stripping things back. I don't need as many inserts on a vocal. I don't need as much reverb on a synth. I don't need as many layers, because if I can just find exactly where I want something to specifically go, I can kind of mediate that rather than just adding and adding and adding to kind of create this big wall of sound where everything's stepping on itself. So that was a huge change. Literally just that one EQ move with the guitars to me was like night and day difference. And then the vocals, like, let me go back to the rough so you can hear it. So this was the vocal on the vocal mix.
My stomach, I'm terrified of it. Maybe I'm just going insane, and I wanna run from it.
You can tell there's like no mid-range in that vocal at all, and there's so much mid-range in everything else. That vocal just kind of sucks out, and it sounds really weird and scooped, and like that 200 range is boomy, and that, you know, 4K to 8K is really sibilant and harsh. So what I wanted to do was figure out how to kind of control that. And it's a little bit hard with my voice. I have this weird resonance around like 200 and 300, but let me show you what I did. So I made some general kind of leveling and standard EQ moves that are not really that important to highlight. They're just kind of random and generic. But one of the big things that I did was I was like, I can add a little bit of saturation to those vocals. So I added this Magma Tubes from Wave, which I have been absolutely loving, kind of dial it back so it's just barely in there. But adding that saturation, I think, really gives me some more full mids and kind of control some of the boominess.
My stomach, I'm terrified of it. Maybe I'm just going insane, and I wanna run from it.
It really gets that vocal to kind of come forward in the mix, but it's starting to kind of boost like that 800 to 1K, so it's sounding a little bit honky. So I'm basically just going to control that with another EQ. So what I'm doing right here is just dipping out a little bit between like what would be 600, 700 up to like 1K, and then again at like 1100, and kind of boosting some of the higher mids, so this can just kind of really control everything in that mid range. And then the last thing is just hit it with a little de-esser, and this is what the vocal sounds like.
My stomach, I'm terrified of it. Maybe I'm just going insane.
It's pretty bright, but this is a dense arrangement, so it kind of just sits on top really, really nicely. Another thing that I realized was the vocal was a little bit too wet, so I just pulled back on all of the effects, especially in the verse. And then when it got to the chorus, let me show you what the vocal stack sounded like. This was mainly just like a leveling and panning thing.
All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the.
So as you can see, it's a pretty big vocal arrangement. It's kind of a call and response. So really all I did was EQ every little vocal layer to kind of have its own space, and then just kind of worked on the panning and worked on the leveling to create this really big, wide call and response. And it sounds like this with just the vocals.
All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the water rising. Please don't let me drown. I can't.
And you can hear how much tighter and wider and more defined all those vocals sound rather than this.
3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down.
So now for the big moment of truth, let's actually show you what this full mix with all of those kind of what I would call rather minuscule changes really sounds like. And then I'll kind of show you some mix bus stuff that I did to just really add that sauce and take it over the edge. So here is what the Focal mix sounded like.
I have a tendency to pull on loose threads till they slowly unravel.
Versus the ATC mix.
I have a tendency to pull on loose threads till they slowly unravel. And if I'm honest with myself, my anxiety will win every battle. There's a pit in my stomach, I'm terrified of it. Maybe I'm just going insane, and I wanna run from it. My mind just never does it. Maybe I just need a new brain. All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm.
Let's hear that chorus on the new ATC mix.
New brain. All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the water rising. Please don't let me drown. I can't seem to catch my breath. I'm fading and I'm having trouble staying on the ground. I can hear everything when I'm. There's never sound. I can feel the water rising. Please don't let me drown. I can't seem to catch my.
So it's much more open, it's much more dynamic, it's much more kind of spread out. You can hear the vocal clear, you can hear every element better. And then let's go to some mix bus stuff that I'm doing. Everything was kind of the same except for this EQ master that I have on here, which I've used on the channel before, just doing a little tiny bit of mid-side EQ. And one of the things that I kind of want to do right now is just dial back this top end just a hair, because I'm realizing it's a little bit bright for me. So let's dial that back just a touch. And then other than that, we have our Linen B kind of doing its thing over here. And then we have Pro L2 kind of doing its thing down here. And that's pretty much the entire mix. Let's hear the chorus one more time.
New brain. All I'm asking for is 3 little minutes now. I just need to find some space and calm my mental down. I can feel the water rising. Please don't let me drown. I can't seem to catch my breath. I'm fading and I'm having trouble staying on the ground. I can hear everything and when I scream, there's never sound. I can feel the water rising. Please don't let me drown. I can't seem to catch my breath. I'm terrified of thoughts in my own head.
And that's kind of what my first pass on the ATC sounds like. So I'll probably print this, come back to it in another day. Right now, I feel like there's still some kind of high mids in the vocals that I want to get under control. But I wanted to get this video out so you could just hear what the different kind of elements of putting a mix together on new speakers sounds like. So as you can see, the mixes are night and day difference. Everybody that I sent the rough kind of ATC mix to preferred it night and day over the Focal mix. So, you know, everybody's got their opinions. I'm sure there will be somebody that watches this video that actually prefers the old mix, and that's totally fine. But to me, I just think that no matter how the final mix comes out, it's just a lot easier to make decisions on these ATCs. I feel like so far everything translates better, where a song in my studio kind of sounds exactly the same as it sounds in my car and on my headphones and on a speaker. I'm finding that I'm not having even little things like playing a song on an iPhone. It doesn't distort, it doesn't clip. These are just things that on the ATCs have not been an issue so far. And I kind of wanted to highlight that by showing you a really specific example of a song mixed on 2 different sets of monitors. So with that said, I'd be keen to know what you're listening on. So let me know in the comments down below what your monitoring setup is. And then other than that, let me know what you think of the new mix versus the old mix. Have any of y'all worked on ATCs? And then let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the near future on the channel. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if you want to support us, you can head over to makepopmusic.com. And if you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next week with more content. Much love. Peace.